19 ways to improve landscape photography. Here are 19 tips that can help you improve your landscape photography. Part 1. They are in no particular order, and the most useful tips will vary according to the situation you are in. Ultimately, they will all help. Firstly, include a foreground. In real life, a landscape scene will have depth with a foreground, a middle ground, and a distance. We can put this into our photograph as well, and it'll make the photo look more realistic. Including a foreground in the picture gives the image a greater feeling of depth. A path or road can be in the foreground and serve to lead the eye into the picture. Here the wall is positioned at an angle to give foreground interest and lead the eye into the middle ground with the church, and then the view goes into the distance. Flowers in the foreground can attract the eye and lead into the picture. Streets give a natural depth to an image, if you're standing in the right place. The colourful flowers near the camera also help. Sometimes a range of mountains in the distance can be all right on its own. Everest with sun on the peaks can be strong enough, but often something in the foreground can help. It might be a flag, a statue, or a local person. The foreground subject matter doesn't have to be in the lower part of the image. It can be dangling down from the top, such as with this tree, or it might involve looking through an archway. So have a strong foreground in the picture. Number 2. Give a scene a strong focal point while still including the environment. Involving the environment at several levels will usually help the picture. The focal point is really the lone tree, while the flowers involve the environment and link up with the tree. The plane on its own has limited appeal, but including the wall of the dam makes the image more complete. The focal point here is the palm trees, and leaning away they lead the eye into the distant landscape. Have a strong focal point. 3. Use a small aperture. Use a small aperture to get maximum depth of field, putting as much of the scene as possible into focus. There are times when you'll be happy to have an object very close to the camera out of focus, but in general landscapes look better if everything is sharp. f11 will be better than f4. To help this along, focus on something 1/3 into the scene. This is called the hyperfocal point and will make the most of any particular aperture. Focusing 1/3 in will mean as much as possible will be in focus at a lens setting. Use a small aperture. Number 4. Use diagonals. Straight, horizontal and vertical lines will look calm and stable, like the perfect uprights of a building, while diagonals make the image look dynamic and more powerful. There are several lines here at various angles, and they make the picture stronger. This scene could be photographed with the ground perfectly level, but framing it at an angle along with the birds in flight gives the image a more active appearance. Use diagonals. 5. Use the lighting conditions. Think of lighting rather than just any old light. The sun and the type of light can really transform an image and change its atmosphere completely. Early morning and late evening, when the sun is shining, are known as the golden hours and are favourite times for taking landscapes. The sun is low in the sky, casting long shadows and bringing out detail. Like the sunrise here with this desert scene, bringing out the detail of the ripples in the sand. If the sun had been at high noon, the scene would have looked flat. Here the sun is low and creates highlights as it catches parts of the scene. And a low sun again in this beach scene in the tropics. Notice how the sun here is almost in front, causing the scene to be backlit. That can look good, but take care not to have the sun directly hitting the lens, or it will cause some unpleasant flare which will spoil the image. Backlit subjects can have a good atmosphere, as with these animals. And it gives water an extra sparkle. Even with cloud, there can be moments of drama if shafts of sunlight suddenly break through. Have the camera ready for that quick grab shot. Sun directly behind the photographer is usually best avoided, as it can make the scene look too flat. The glow from the setting sun can give a scene a unique look. If the light really isn't suitable, try going back at a different time in the day. Look at the light and use the lighting. 6. Look for good skies. Very often the sky can change in a few minutes and transform the scene. A good sky can really make an image, or it can be a feature in itself. In scenes like this, the land is hardly necessary. If the sky is boring, make it a smaller part of the image, framing the picture to concentrate on a more interesting foreground. If you've got a good image, which is spoilt by a dreary sky, you could always add a better sky later if you're good with image retouching. And don't forget stormy skies. They come with their own drama. Look for good skies. 7. Use a firm support. Sometimes a tripod is necessary, in very poor light, or if using a small aperture means a slow shutter speed. Alternatives are one of the many clamping devices available on the market. Bean bags are cheap and easy to carry around. They can be placed on the ground or on a wall for better support. Pressing the shutter button runs the risk of shaking the camera slightly and spoiling the picture. Then use a cable release or the camera's self-timer. It's very frustrating to look at a potentially good image on the computer only to find it has camera shake because you couldn't be bothered to use proper camera support. It's happened to all of us. Use a tripod or firm support. 8. Don't rush. Using a tripod leads to the next tip. Using a tripod slows us down, which is a good thing. Be patient. Take time to walk around and find the best viewpoint. Don't rush, but be patient. It pays dividends in the end. It also means we can enjoy the peace and tranquility of the location more, while waiting for the perfect moment. Some people like to scout a new location first, but I never do a recce without a camera. If you don't have a camera, there's always going to be a good photo you missed. So take a camera even if you think you are just going to look. Come back later for another photo in different conditions. Don't rush. Take time to look around and find the best viewpoint. 9. After dark. After a low sun with interesting shadows come the sunsets, which most of us would use in a photograph at times. Don't put away the camera just because it's getting late in the day. Early evening and night shots can be tremendous and give unique views. Evening pictures in country or town are best taken when there's still some light in the sky. If the sky is too light, it will come out lighter in the picture and won't look like evening. If the sky is too dark, it will come out black, and lots of structures will be lost in the blackness. There's usually a 10-minute period when the sky is just right. This takes practice. It's best to take a series of pictures with different exposures. Exposures might well be several seconds, so use a tripod or find a good support somewhere. Go for evening pictures. Darker still and we get full nighttime and moonlight. This was the occasion of the supermoon, when the moon is much larger than normal. The exposure was about half a second, so a beanbag can still be used with the camera's self-timer rather than pressing the shutter button. Photos taken by the light of the moon can be a bit different. The light itself is actually daylight, because it's the sun illuminating the moon. There just isn't much of it, and exposures are going to run into minutes. Most people never take pictures at night, but it can produce unusual landscapes. Here is the full moon rising over the sea and behind cloud, when the sky was almost dark. Exposure was nearly a minute. This is definitely tripod time. Take landscapes at night. Use the light of a bright moon. 10. The rule of thirds. When it comes to composing an image, the traditional rule of thirds is still very useful. The idea is to divide the image into thirds down and across. Horizons can look good 1/3 from the bottom or 1/3 from the top of the image. Positioning a subject on one of the crossing points can give a very balanced look. The 1/3 rule can make an image look well proportioned. This, like everything else, should only be used as a guide. Don't be a slave to it, but see what looks good. The image here does not follow any rule of thirds. Neither the castle, the horizon, nor the boat is on the right lines or corners, but the image seems to work. Sometimes the sky or the ground can be much more important in the image, so it can be better to use proportions of 90% to 10%. Try the rule of thirds to balance an image. For free tutorials and courses on photography and image editing, tap the link in the description below. End of part 1.